So, a bit of a political earthquake in the United Kingdom this morning. I'll give you the headline that everyone seems to want. It seems that Rishi Sunak is set to be thrown out very dramatically of the office of Prime Minister because his party, the Conservative Party, is about to suffer a major election defeat. The indications coming in this morning in the UK show that, of course, we've already had the exit polls showing the opposition Labour Party, led by Sir Keir Starmer, will receive 410 seats in a 650 odd seat parliament. The Conservative Party, which had 365 seats before this election, Rishi Sunak's Conservative Party, is expected to go down to just 131 seats. That's a drop of around 230 seats. You know, we're tracking the exit poll, we're tracking the polls here closely as the results come in, and it seems that, in fact, those exit polls seem to be correct. We are headed towards a system where the Conservatives are led by Rishi Sunak are going to be suffering a major defeat. There has been a massive national backlash against the Conservative Party on par with some of the other massive landslide results that have taken place in UK politics over the last 20 to 30 years, and that's set to deliver a major victory for the Labour Party. So let's just walk you through some of the numbers. The Conservative Party's vote share, which used to be, hovering around, 39-40%, has dropped 20%. It has halved almost in this election. They're hovering around 21% right now, which means they're about to be blanked quite badly in this election. The Labour Party's vote, of course, has risen a great deal. There's a 10.3% national swing against the Conservatives, which basically means that, a swing essentially means, is there a swing for you or a swing against you? There seems to be a strong swing against the Conservative Party, which is contributing to their massive defeat. In fact, the Conservatives are going to find it hard to stay ahead. I mean, I was just checking the polls, the results coming in right now. In fact, the Conservatives have not even crossed 25 to 50 seats. They haven't crossed 50 seats yet, but Labour is already at 200 seats, which shows that they're well on the way to getting this massive majority. Let's dive into the weeds a little bit. Some of the big results coming in. Keir Starmer, who is likely to end this week as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland, is going to be, Great Britain and Northern Ireland, forgive me for getting the titles mixed up, is going to be the Prime Minister. It looks like he's won his seat. Jeremy Corbyn, the former leader of the Labour Party, someone who was seen as a very radical extreme figure, someone who was expelled from the Labour Party, has actually run as an independent and has won his seat. So that's a big result as well. A major result as well is Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, which has been seen as a much more conservative, much more extreme party on things like immigration and cultural nationalism. Nigel Farage, who of course you may remember from his advocacy for the 2016 Brexit vote, is also going to win his seat in Clacton, which means that he is likely to enter British Parliament. So really a massive result, and you might hear this a lot moving forward over the couple of days. One of the big reasons the Conservatives lost, and we'll get into some of the other reasons, was because they were essentially outflanked by Reform, which was seen as a much more conservative, much more extreme party on certain issues. So look, we've given you the headline numbers. 410 for Labour, 131 for Conservatives. What does all of this mean? Why did it happen? Now, essentially, we've been tracking this for a while. And the big issue is that the people of the United Kingdom are essentially just tired of the Conservative Party. They have been in power since 2010, 14 years now, and that means that there is a large amount of anti-incumbency in the UK. But it's not just about people feeling tired of the Conservatives, it's also that their policy record, their record on delivering for the country has not been seen as particularly positive. We've covered this a lot so far, but the British economy is facing significant trouble. It has seen massive drops in productivity. Inflation, until very recently, was in double digits, which you don't see very much for a developed, advanced country like Britain. So there was a massive cost of living crisis where just basic essentials that you need to survive, whether it's food and so on and so forth, really became much more expensive for the common British voter, which meant that materially Britons were feeling a lot poorer. So the economic growth has slowed down, productivity is down, inflation is up, and all of this, I think, really hurt the Conservative Party, which has always prided itself on its record on economic governance. Rishi Sunak himself, as Prime Minister, former investment banker, made his reputation as Britain's finance minister during the pandemic. But unfortunately, the knocks on his economic record were just too strong for him to sustain, really. There have been problems like the Ukraine war, the pandemic, and so on and so forth that have really hurt the British economy a great deal, and that this was, I think, a massive wave of discontent that hit the Conservative government. They were seen as responsible for economic mismanagement, and it was something that it was a brand and a tag that they just couldn't shed. So the economy was a major part of the reason why the Conservative Party lost, why Rishi Sunak seems to be losing. Cost of living, as we mentioned, just things have become much more difficult for ordinary citizens. We were talking to some Indian students in the UK, talking to us about how difficult and expensive things have become for students and just for ordinary people there. So the economy and the cost of living is one bucket of issues. Another bucket of issues is public services. Britain has always prided itself on the fact that it has strong public services, things like health. The National Health Service is, I think, quite renowned globally for providing affordable care at reasonable cost. Unfortunately, the National Health Service seems to be falling apart. I was joking about it with one of my colleagues off camera, but it really seems like if you get injured in the UK or get hurt, you have to wait weeks and weeks for what is really something you need immediate care for. But you have to wait weeks and weeks in the UK now because of how badly the system has broken down in the UK. This is a system that used to work extremely well, but people have increasingly come to the realization that actually basic public services like national health are not working as well as they used to, and the Conservative Party has come in for a lot of blame on that, because it said that they haven't reformed these services well. It said that they haven't spent as much money as they should have on reforming these institutions that have become so essential to Britain. So this was another major problem. A third problem was immigration. The Conservative Party has always said that, look, we're going to reduce immigration, but the problem is that Rishi Sunak's government, as well as several others before them, really failed to deliver on migration. Remember that over 10 years, if my memory serves me correctly, Britain's population has increased by 2.2 million people because of immigration. So lots of people want to crack down on that, and part of it is illegal immigration. You may have seen something called the boats crisis, which is people coming over from France. These are refugees from Afghanistan, from Turkey, from other parts of the world, who are taking small boats to cross the English Channel from France, get into the UK. And this has been highly controversial because these people have been landing up in the UK, and they're illegal immigrants, of course. They are seeking refuge and asylum. And increasingly, the Conservative Party said, look, we're going to stop the boats, we're going to stop this crisis. They are not seen to have stopped that crisis very well, so people are unhappy that they have not dealt with immigration properly. The Conservative Party has also said that, look, we're going to put a greater stop on legal migration as well, by skilled, educated workers. That, of course, they've unveiled a number of measures to do that. But as you can see, immigration is something that's another big issue that people just feel that the Conservatives have not performed on. So now that we have this result, what is going to happen? Actually, before that, let me go into something else. Let me talk about Rishi Sunak, the man everyone wants to talk about. Is Rishi Sunak responsible for this defeat? What exactly went wrong? I have to say that, look, when Rishi Sunak came into office in 2022, he was already facing a lot of these problems about the economy, about healthcare, about immigration. So, of course, he did not create a number of these problems. But the simple fact of the matter is that as a politician, he has just not been able to rise to the occasion. He was a very good finance minister, but he hasn't been able to rise to the occasion as prime minister to convince the British people to give his party another spell in office. He has been very, very heavily criticized for a number of reasons. Firstly, of course, the problem is that he's very politically inexperienced. Remember that Rishi Sunak became a member of parliament back in 2015. That was just 7 years afterwards he became prime minister, right? Just 7 years of experience. He's only been in politics. He's been in politics for less than a decade, right? So he doesn't have that kind of experience in being a politician. And what you see is that his communication style has been somewhat wooden. He hasn't been able to get his point across. He's faced some major PR nightmares. Recently, I don't know if you saw this, but there was a major celebration for a World War II battle, which was honoring veterans of that great conflict. And Rishi Sunak left early because he had to attend a television interview. And he was very roundly criticized for it in the general public. People said that, look, this is just, he's out of touch. He just doesn't get it. And it was a major PR disaster for him. And his style, unfortunately, is not of a very charismatic figure. So while he's a very competent manager, he hasn't been able to convince the British people that he's the kind of charismatic politician that they need to lead them out of the crisis that the country finds itself in. Another big problem was his wealth. Like, let's be honest, Indians know him very well. For being the husband of Akshata Murthy, the son-in-law of Narayana Murthy. He's, richer than the king, very famously, worth almost £1 billion. But the problem is, in a country that is increasingly facing major economic troubles, where people are, in a material sense, getting very much poorer. Rishi Sunak has been seen as someone who's hopelessly too rich, hopelessly out of touch, because, there have been pictures of him floating in about him wearing expensive Prada shoes, him having a coffee mug that was 200 pounds, which is not the kind of money that ordinary people can afford to spend. So, from his immaculately tailored, $5,000 suits to his shoes to his coffee mugs, everything about him eeks rich, right? It screams rich. In fact, there was a word cloud which is, if you were to go to someone and say that, what do you think about me? They take a poll of people who know you, and all the words that they think about you would come up in a word cloud. So if people said, oh, he's a very nice person, nice would pop up as a very big word, because that's what a lot of people think about you. Well, when they did it for Rishi Sunak with the British public, the overwhelming word that popped up, the word that first popped up in their minds when they thought of Rishi Sunak was rich. Right? That's it, rich. And so I think that for a country that's going through so much economic trouble, he was unable to shed that image of him just being a rich investment banker who did not understand the problems of ordinary people. So Rishi Sunak, as much as Indians are fond of him, is absolutely part of the problem and part of the reason why the Conservatives have been unable to avoid a massive defeat. Let's just move into the last segment where we talk about what does this result mean for India, right? Which is another thing that people are interested in. Look, Rishi Sunak and the Conservative Party have tried to build a much closer relationship with India over the last couple of years. The important thing to remember is that they started talks on a free trade agreement with India. They tried to tilt towards the Indo-Pacific, which is our region of the world, because they wanted to work more closely with India on economics, on security, on defense. And one of the big achievements of the Sunak government, when it comes to India at least, was to establish a strong working relationship with Prime Minister Modi, and to have Rajnath Singh, India's defense minister, in the UK for the first time in about 20 years, because that was a big deal, because the UK used to be at one point in time, many years ago, more years than I care to remember, it was India's top defense partner. And now what you see is that Britain has really dropped out of the race in terms of supplying India defense equipment, working with India on defense. That's something they want to change, and that's something the Rishi Sunak government worked quite hard on. So absolutely, there was a sense that the Conservatives were more engaged on defense, more engaged on foreign policy, wanted to work more closely with India. So that intent was certainly there, but the problem with the Conservative Party was that in recent years it has become a lot more extreme on a number of issues. And given, of course, I talked to you about that immigration was a big problem, they've really launched a major crackdown on immigration. And this is not just illegal migrants, this is people who are legal, skilled workers who have gone through all the right processes to get to the UK. The UK wants to stop even them from coming over. And that has hit Indians particularly badly. Sunak has put into place visa laws and salary laws. For example, you need to earn a certain amount of money to qualify to receive a UK visa to work there. Well, that amount was hiked by 50%. It was £26,000. It's been raised to £37,000. And that's made it a lot harder for Indian students who have studied in the UK to stay on there, get jobs, and contribute to the British economy and become the sort of living bridge between India and the UK. It's really been, we've talked to 3 Indian students. You can actually catch that interview that we did on our channel with 3 Indian students who talked about how their plans to stay on in the UK had been affected by Sunak's policies on restricting workers, restricting students from coming to the UK. I can give you another example. There's the graduate visa scheme, which basically allows you to stay in the UK for 2 years after you've completed your degree, 3 years if you've completed a PhD. And Sunak came after that scheme. He wanted to cancel it, and senior members of his cabinet who had nothing to do with India, who weren't seen as Indian origin in any way, they stood up and said this is the wrong thing to do. We shouldn't cancel this very vital scheme, because international students coming to our country is a good thing. Well, Prime Minister Sunak didn't agree, but ultimately he had to back down and the scheme wasn't cancelled. But you can see that this phobia about immigration has really impacted this very basic component of the relationship, which is Indians going to live and work and study in the UK. It's something that affects ordinary people. And while you can do things like defense, you can do things like talk a big game, you can talk about a free trade agreement, basic things that affect the lives of Indians, I think that the Sunak government and the Conservative Party did not deliver on. But we were talking about the free trade agreement. One of the big roadblocks to the free trade agreement has been that actually the Sunak government does not want to allow people who does not want to allow easier migration routes so that Indians can come and move freely between India and the UK. That was something they did not want to work very closely on with India. And so while there are many problems and many reasons why India and the UK have not been able to deliver on their free trade agreement, the Sunak government's policy on migration has been one of the big reasons. And now we talk about the Labour Party. The Labour Party, of course, which is set to come in with a very strong majority. Keir Starmer likely to become Prime Minister of the UK. Something I was actually just popping over to India today before I hopped on this live with you. And one of the interesting things that I was saying there was that the Labour Party was at one point in time seen as very suspicious of India. Especially under the government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. They had serious concerns about human rights, democracy, and so on and so forth. In 2019, they actually came out and many Labour MPs came out and actually protested the abrogation of Article 370 in Kashmir. So India began to feel like this was a party that India simply could not trust. But over the last couple of years, under Keir Starmer's leadership, they have become far more centrist, far more moderate. You had the foreign secretary, the shadow foreign secretary, which basically means the man who is about to likely become the next foreign minister of the UK, David Lammy, came out, gave a big speech talking about how the Labour Party wants a closer relationship with India. It won't allow domestic political issues like Kashmir to interfere with the relationship, and they're determined to deliver on this free trade agreement with India that the Conservatives have been unable to. So they're very clear, India is an important part of our foreign policy strategy. So really a lot of moderation, a lot of changing in image for the Labour Party over the last couple of years under Sir Keir Starmer. So India will have to see how that plays out, whether Labour will be as good as its word. But at this point in time, it seems that Labour has a strong incentive to be pro-India because they also have a large Indian voter base in the UK. So of course they want to make sure that they aren't turning off that voter base by being anti-India. So absolutely, there's a domestic political objective behind this, that they want to woo the Indian voters, but they also want a strong foreign policy. So really, there seems to be emerging both among the Conservative Party and the Labour Party a sense that the relationship with India is important, and things will be all right. Nothing too much to worry about in the relationship. Of course, how things develop over the next couple of years, we will have to see. But at this point in time, the big headline is that Rishi Sunak is set to lose his office as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and very soon we should see Sir Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, become Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Thank you so much for watching India Today Global. We have Geeta Mohan, our executive editor, on the ground in London as the results flood in. We will keep you updated as these results come in, but please do stay with us, and we will let you know as soon as we have the final results in this UK election. Thank you so much for watching.